Hello my book beauties, Akira here, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the releases that I am really excited about that are coming out in the month of September 2020. There are so many great releases this month. This month is also my birth month, so I love the fact that my birthday month happens to be like around the time like all of these great releases come out, because it's just an excuse for me to splurge a little. So we're going to start off here like with September 1st. There are a lot of new releases for September 1st that are coming out, and a lot of them actually happen to be sequels. Well, actually, I'm not sure how many are sequels, but I know there's going to be quite a few in here like that are part of a series. So the first book that I want to discuss that's coming out in September 1st is Blood and Honey by Shelby Morin. And I read the first book last year, and yeah, it's got its problems, like there's a lot of problematic content in it, but I liked the angsty kind of like romance like between a witch hunter and a witch, and I'm really excited like that we finally get to see like where the story is going to progress to, because the first book, Serpent and Dove, actually left on a cliffhanger, so I'm really excited to see where we go from here. Another book that I am really excited about is called Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. This particular book is the sequel to Blood and Ash, which is a book that I read earlier this year, and it has vampires and there's like a lot of like intrigue and stuff. It is a new adult romance, and it is by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I am so excited like that we are getting a second book this year. This series, like, I'm just so ecstatic about, because like I do love myself a good paranormal romance, which is exactly what this is. I really loved the first one. I thought the first one was just so fantastic, and it gave me exactly like what I wanted. It kind of has a dark side, but like I love Hawk, who is the main love interest in this. He gives me such Rai Sand vibes, and he's always encouraging our lead lady to be herself and to be independent, and he actually romanticizes the fact that she's independent and not like a lot of the other girls that he's met. So I really love all of this, and I'm so glad that we are getting a sequel, which is the second book coming out for this year for the series, and I am so excited. Another book that is also coming out September 1st, which is by Katie O'Neill. It is the third book in the T Dragon series, and the T Dragon series is actually geared towards children, but it has enough warmth and love in it to please anyone. I read the first book. I have not read the second book. This book, which is called the T Dragon Tapestry, is the third book in this series, and I have not read the second book, but you know what? I don't need to read the second book to know that I'm going to love this, because the first book was just so awesome. It was so heartwarming, and I just absolutely loved it. Like, it was just so sweet, and it's about like these like little dragons like that they have like this tea that they kind of produce, like these tea leaves, and you make tea out of them, and they allow you to dream, and I just think it's such a sweet, wonderful, intriguing world, and I cannot wait for this third book to come out. Another book that's coming out September 1st that's getting an insane amount of hype is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This is a Latinx inspired male, I believe, LGBTQIA romance, and I am so excited for this one. This has been getting a ton of positive responses. I'm not sure yet if this is going to be the first book in the series or in a series or not, because Goodreads has not said. From what I can tell, it's going to be a standalone. There's just so much to be excited for this. Our main character, Yadriel, who is Latinx, to summon a ghost to try to find his brother's murderer. And it turns out that he summons the ghost of the resident school bad boy. And I kind of feel like that this is going to be like a lot of fun. Like, it's probably going to be some hate to love in here, and we're also probably going to get like that, you know, like angsty like bad boy vibe, you know, like constantly taunting our protagonist, and I'm so here for it. I think this is going to be such a fun book. Another book that I am super excited about that comes out September 1st is Punching the Air by Ibi Zoboi and Youssef Salem. This book is a book that's told entirely in verse, and it's about this young boy who's wrongfully incarcerated, and it kind of ruins like everything that he hopes and dreams for the future. Amal Sahid is a poet, and he dreams of being a poet professionally. He is seen as disrupted and unmotivated by the bias system that he's a part of, and one night he is actually incarcerated and accused of doing a crime that he did not commit. At just 16 years old, his entire future and life are put in jeopardy because he is running the risk of having to spend a long time in prison. This book sounds super powerful. I love books told in verse. This has actually gotten a ton of early positive reviews, and I'm so excited to see like how this book really is, because I love poetry, I love books told in verse, and I really love the power that they bring with them. Because usually poetry books pack a heck of a punch, and they're usually told like in such beautiful lingo. I just love it so much. So I'm really excited to see about this book also. Another book that I'm super excited about that is coming out, and of course these are all US dates. I know like a lot of UK dates usually are different. This is also coming out on September 1st, and it is called Queen of Volts by Amanda Foody. This is the third and final book in the Shadow Games trilogy. I recently read the first book, which is called Ace of Shades, and I adored it. Like, I was not expecting it to love it as much as I did, but it was so wonderful. The romance like didn't overtake the plot line, and it just flowed so well. And so I'm really excited to see like how everything ends. I'm going to be reading the second book very shortly, and I am so excited to see like how everything pans out, because like I just absolutely positively love the first book, and I'm so excited for this. If the second two books end up progressing the way the first book did, then this is going to end up being an all-time favorite series. So now we go into September 8th. The first book that I'm really excited about that's coming out on September 8th is by Frederick Bachman, and it's called Anxious People. This is kind of considered a comedy, and it's about this bank robber that takes a bunch of people hostage, and the news media is all over it. You get a look at the news media outlet that's kind of outside of the entire hostage situation. And I believe it's probably going to be told in dual perspectives, because like you get a bunch of strangers in the same room together, and like, this just sounds so interesting. I have heard quite a few mixed reviews about this, so I'm not really sure. I've only read one book by Frederick Bachman, and it was a nonfiction book. I haven't read Beartown yet, which I really hope to get to, but this just sounds like it's going to be so much fun, and I'm really interested in seeing what other reviews come out for this, because everything that I know about Frederick Bachman, a lot of his books are deeply emotional. And I believe like this is my first encounter like with really seeing like him do comedy, aside from the one nonfiction book that I read by him, which was dedicated to his son. Now, as far as September 8th goes, we have a couple sapphic romances like that are headed your way, and they are fantasy, both of them. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is Ironheart, which is the second book in the Crier Wars series, and it is a sapphic YA romance. This story takes place in a world where you have an autome, which I believe is a robot, and you have a human girl, and they fall in love together against all odds. Ayla is a human servant, and she's rising ranks in the House of Sovereign, and she dreams of avenging her family. Crier is the daughter of the king that Ayla is trying to avenge against, and Crier doesn't realize that her father isn't as benevolent as she thinks he is. She may be betrothed, but that is before she meets Ayla. This sounds like wonderful. I've been wanting to read this for quite a while, but I always try to focus on my reading stuff that's getting ready to complete as a series. That doesn't mean that I don't have a ton of stuff that I'm interested in, because I do, but this actually does look like a duology. So I believe that this book, the second book in the series, because I usually give you synopsis for the first book, which is what I just did, just sounds so amazing. And it's the second, I believe it's going to be a duology, so I'll be able to get to this series very soon. Another book, and this is also a beginning of a series. This is an adult LGBTQIA fantasy, and I'm super excited about it. It's called The Boneshard Daughter, and this is the first book in the Drowning Empire series, written by Andrea Stewart. This book consists of bone shard magic. I'm not really too sure what bone shard magic is, but I know it sounds interesting. I wonder if it has like to do with necromancers, but I'm not really sure. It just sounds so interesting, and it is a tale of revolution and our main character, Lynn, who's trying to raise in the ranks and to become emperor. This is a female fantasy, and it is geared towards the empowerment of females. We don't have a ton of adult epic fantasies that are geared towards females, so I'm really excited about this one, because I just feel like it's going to be, this book has a lot to offer. I feel like if you're a fan of The Priory of the Orange Tree, this is probably going to be right up your alley. The next book that I'm really excited about comes out on September 15th by Nina LaCour. It's called Watch Over Me. This is the same author that wrote We Are Okay, and I read that book and it was so hard-hitting and so good. This actually, Watch Over Me, has more of a paranormal aspect to it, it sounds like. Mila has been living alone for a good portion of her life. She was in the foster care system but aged out of it. She was never actually adopted. When she goes to a farmhouse, she realizes that the farmhouse has got a really dark past and is actually haunted by that past. A lot of traumatic things happened at the farmhouse that she now has to escape and or deal with the consequences of what the ghosts reap for her. Now with this, Mila is triggered by these strange things that are happening at this farmhouse, and her own past kind of comes to the surface in the midst of everything. This book sounds so amazing, and We Are Okay was so good that I'm really curious to know how I'm going to feel about this one because it just sounds so fabulous. And it's another one that I'm really looking forward to. Another book that I'm really excited about is The Trouble with Peace, and I'm only going to mention this briefly because I have not read the very first book in this trilogy. I've only read the first trilogy in this world, which was the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. This is part of a whole new trilogy. This is the second book in this trilogy, and this actually follows Sans Alglocka's daughter and the future of the world. And honestly, like past that, I'm not really sure what exactly this is about because I don't want to ruin myself for it, but I know that I was really looking forward to this because the more books that come out for this series, the closer we are to having a completed trilogy, which means the closer I am to being able to binge it. This is an adult fantasy grimdark, and I absolutely love the character development that Joe Abercrombie goes through. He really develops his characters. He does a wonderful job developing them. They always feel so real, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this out in the world. The next book that's also coming out September 15th is To Sleep in the Stars by Christopher Paranisi. This is the same author that wrote Aragon, and that was a middle grade series. This particular book, though, this is actually an adult science fiction series with our main character, Kira. Kira has always dreamed of life in new worlds. She's always dreamed of exploring and going out into the universe. During a routine survey mission on a remote planet, she notices that the dust starts to move on its own, and she is terrified. War erupts into the stars, and she's launched into a space odyssey of galaxy transformation. At this point, the Earth stands at the brink of annihilation, and Kira has to figure out what she can do to stop it. This book is supposed to be a standalone. It's 880 pages long, so it's going to be huge. But already some of the early reviews have come in for this, and it really made me interested because I have heard actually quite a bit of really good things about this. Even though Christopher Paranisi has never written adult science fiction before, he's only written middle grade fantasy. This has still been getting a lot of really positive buzz, and I'm really excited and looking forward to reading it. Another book that I'm really looking forward to is Horrified by Katrina Leno. This is a YA horror novel that is sprinkled with grief and rage and twisted in with spine-chilling elements of Stephen King and Agatha Christie. Jane's father and her mother moved from sunny California to New England, to a dilapidated and dreary portion of New England that leaves them in a house where Jane's mother grew up. But Jane, she kind of takes solace by herself. She investigates old books that are in this house, and she also experiences a ton of bullying, being seen as a bad seed. Jane's mother also seems to be spiraling as she returns to her childhood home, which brings back a ton of memories from when she grew up. But Jane's mother won't talk about it, and she won't reveal why she's so triggered by this house. In the midst of everything, Jane goes exploring inside this house that her mother grew up in and discovers a hidden door that leads to a little girl's room that has been empty for years. So we can kind of see where this is going. And it just sounds really twisted and dark, and it sounds like it's also going to be an exploration of deep introspection with a side of horror and mystery. So I'm really kind of looking forward to seeing also what this book kind of is going to be about. I'm also very much looking forward to seeing how good this book is because it just sounds really interesting. Another book that is coming out on September 15th is Each of Us a Desert by Mark Ashiro, and this is the same author that wrote Anger is a Gift. This is it sounds like it's going to be a sapphic YA kind of like romance, but science fiction, and also has an element of fantasy in it from what I could understand with everything that is going on in here. Our main character is wandering the desert by herself, and when she comes across this town that has a mayor's daughter in it. Our protagonist has spent so much time by herself that she is just looking for somebody to call her own. She's looking to make a connection with someone. In the form of a mayor's daughter that our protagonist comes across, the mayor's daughter, Amelia, is very cold, and she is also by herself. So the two set out together and they kind of find so much more. And this sounds super magical and it sounds beautiful, and I'm so excited for this one. This is one that I definitely want to pick up ASAP. Another book that is also coming out on the 15th of September is Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. Our main character, Enchanted Jones, is on her way to rising in stardom and when she comes across this guy named Corey. Corey has everything that she's always dreamed of. He is very well to do, and he's actually like not all he seems. The closer Enchanted gets to Corey, she finds out that he is a very dark person and that he is actually very mean and cruel. And one day, a dead body comes about and it turns out to be Corey's. Before everything was happening, Enchanted had everything that she could want because she's working her way up to stardom. With the dead body and the blood on her hands, she now has to figure out what happened the night before, and nobody has more questions about the scenario than she does. Corey Fields is actually the legendary R&B artist, and Enchanted feels that she has a shot at real stardom. Of course, everything goes to hell after that. So this book actually sounds really interesting. It sounds kind of like a murder mystery, like a whodunit, and Enchanted actually kill him trying to defend herself? Or did something else happen, like a freak accident? I mean, it could be so many things, but this just sounds really interesting, and the cover on this is so beautiful. Like, I'm really looking forward to this one. This is going to be the last book that I talk about that's going to be released on September 15th, but not the last book I talk about. This book is actually called Paranisi by Susanna Clarke. She is the same author as Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which I believe is also a BBC series based on her book. Paranisi's house is no ordinary house. This house is infinite. It has infinite amount of rooms, and every day Paranisi actually goes through and explores the rooms and the different dimensions of this house. Twice a week, there is a man that comes in called the Other that recruits Paranisi to try to help him. He is asking Paranisi into the research of the great and secret knowledge. Well, now Paranisi really doesn't have a lot of other things going on like right now aside from exploring the house, because Paranisi is a prisoner in her own house. The more Paranisi helps to unravel this truth that this man is asking her to help with, the more she realizes like that there are things beyond the house that she never could have dreamed of. This sounds so good. It's actually not that long of a book. It's only 272 pages, so I feel like there's going to be a lot going on in a very short amount of time, and I'm kind of curious to see how fleshed out everything is going to be and how much is going to be left to mystery. So yeah, I'm really excited about this one also. This is just going to be, I don't know, there's just so many great releases in the months of September, and we're not even done with this list yet. Like, there's still more to go. Now we're moving on to September 22nd. Another book that's coming out is called Well Played. This is the sequel to Well Met. I read Well Met last year, and it takes place at a Renaissance fair. I loved it. It was so cute, so sweet. I felt the characters were pretty well developed, and I'm really looking forward to this because Well Played also is set in the same universe, same area, probably at another Renaissance festival. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same like one. Maybe like maybe we'll get cameos from like the first characters like that were in the book Well Met, and I'm just so excited because like I love the idea of having a romance at a Renaissance fair. I've always been a huge fan of Renaissance fairs, and what they did with Well Met was just so good, like where they liked each other when they were in cosplay for the Renaissance fair and did not like each other when they were outside of the cosplay. So I'm really looking forward to seeing like what kind of new elements like Jen DeLuca incorporates into this, because the first one was so good. Another book that is also coming out September 22nd is Miss Meteor by Anna Marie McLemore and Telhor K. Meha. This is a YA sapphic romance with a space beauty pageant element to it. The whole thing behind Miss Meteor is like, it's not about being perfect, it's about sharing yourself with the rest of the world and exposing who you are to it. It's about exposing yourself and being yourself, and this just sounds so amazing. But not only is it a sapphic romance, it's a sapphic romance between two competing applicants for the Miss Meteor pageant. So hate to love? Do I sense some hate to love? Do I sense some healthy competition? Do I sense some angst? Yes, I sense all of the above for this one. What's really awesome about this too is this is kind of like an underdog story, like where the two applicants like that we are discussing are also underdogs, and who doesn't love a good underdog story, like where the underdogs really get the bone. Another book that I'm really excited about that's coming out on September 22nd is called Hench by Natalie Zena Walscott. This is another one of those that turns the superhero trope on its head. Our main character, Anna, does terrible things to terrible people, and because even criminals need a job. She works as a temp doing odd jobs for the villains of the story, but she figures, it could be worse. I could be doing a lot of more horrible things than I am right now. When she finally gets a promising assignment, she has interaction with the quote-unquote hero of our story, and he ends up leaving her badly injured, and she realizes that she is one of the lucky ones because there are a stream of dead bodies all around her that were left in the hero's wake. So of course, after this kind of situation, she gets laid off. And with no money and no hope for another position because of everything that happened, she starts to research superheroes and realizes that pretty much everything that we know about superheroes has more to do with propaganda and good media outlets than it does with actually being a hero. She realizes that everything that we know about superheroes, the key to that is in the data. So she starts to collect the data, and she figures out how to construct it, analyze it, and manipulate it to show the world who superheroes really are. And she realizes like that everything having to do with superheroes is just propaganda. This is, I love stories like where, you know, you get superheroes like that kind of get turned on their heads for the superhero trope, and I feel like that this is going to be like one of those books that did this. This is actually one of the ones that I have pre-ordered, so I'll be able to review it and talk about it on my channel. I am so excited. I think this book is going to be just so much fun and so interesting. The last book I'm going to talk about is coming out on September 29th, and it's called Battleground by Jim Butcher. This is Harry Dresden, The Dresden Files, book number 17, and this is a continuation of the last book. We are getting 2 Dresden Files books in the same year, and I am so ecstatic. I love this series. It is a very long series, but it's kept fresh by the fact that we have so many twists and turns and all these new characters and new dimensions that get introduced into this story. This is definitely a memorable story and is one that I highly recommend, especially on audiobook, because the audiobooks are done by James Marsters and they are just so good, and I highly recommend them. You guys should definitely check out the series. Well guys, thank you so much for joining me for all the releases. I've put a list down in the description below of every single one of the releases. I did mention most of them this time because there are so many releases like that are coming out in September, but I also left links to all of them to Goodreads, so if you guys are interested in getting more of a synopsis and explanation, also like looking at some of the early reviews that are available for these books, everything is at your fingertips. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like this video, hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell icon if you guys want to receive emails every single time I post. I'm also on Instagram, Amazon, Twitter, and Goodreads. Those links are linked in the description below, and I will see you guys again very soon.